Welcome back to the Forge. Have you ever looked back on a situation and thought, I knew this was coming? Maybe it was your marriage, maybe your health, maybe a friendship, maybe finances, maybe even your relationship with God. Looking back, there were warning signs everywhere, but you told yourself, it isn't that bad. I'll figure it out. I'll deal with it later. Then one day the phone rings, the doctor calls, she says she's done. Your boss calls you into the office. Suddenly you're asking, how did this happen? But maybe the better question is, why did I wait until the pain forced me to pay attention? Today we're talking about the one of the greatest traps men fall into, waiting for consequences before taking responsibility. Jason, this is something that I know I've done many times, and that's one of actually the reasons. I mean, yes, I did go to marriage counseling and stuff like that, but it is one of the things that I fell into often when I look back at my relationship. And yeah, I just want to welcome you back to the show. And as always, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me back. Yeah, this is something that every man, I think, goes through, present company included. And every time that I experience what happens afterwards, and I definitely want to get into this material because it's so important. But I think it's also important for men to realize that they aren't alone when this happens to them. That this is something that pretty much all men do. And if you ask yourself, why do I do this? Well, I used to ask myself that question all the time. And I finally figured it out. And even though I didn't like the answer, I had to accept the answer that I was given. And what I found out was that the reason I did this, there was two reasons. One was morbid curiosity. I wanted to find out what was going to happen. And two, a much more difficult thing to talk about is a lack of belief or a lack of enjoyment of myself, meaning that I had very low self-worth. I didn't believe that I deserved to have anything other than this happen, so I allowed things to play out the way that they did, whether it was the dissolution of my marriage, the getting um having clients leave, or having a job pulled out from under me, or laws, opportunities, whatever it might be. By not doing something to preserve what you have, you are introducing loss. And yeah, curiosity might be one of those reasons. Well, what will happen when I do this? But with curiosity, that should only happen once. And if it happens over and over again, it speaks to a deeper issue, something that is going on deeper, something that is an issue with the relationship one has with themselves. And that's something that kind of goes hand in hand with this, especially if it goes beyond curiosity. And I think that curiosity is a great teacher. I think that failure is something that we learn from, that we learn the most from the mistakes that we make. I also think that once we learn from those mistakes, we must strive to do better. I recently got into trading options on the financial market, and I've learned a lot from doing that. Getting back into it after about 8 years, and I've only committed a failure point once, maybe twice. If it was twice, it was because of habit, and I had to just need to remove that habit or to plan that habit out before the next trading day. But since I learned from those habits, I knew that there wasn't a problem with myself. I was able to learn from those and do better, fix the problem, and then focus on the next problem that arises, which is fine because problems are supposed to arise. And this is not talking about avoiding problems. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is noticing when things are going bad, excuse me, noticing when things are going bad and doing something to prevent catastrophe. And that's the only way that you can ensure that things will go better than hitting rock bottom. It's the only way that you can actually do something to salvage a situation. And like Jason said, there are some things that we go through that we can't control. That's fine. You're not supposed to control your circumstance. What you control is how you respond to it.
That's really a great way to cap off what you were just summarizing there. Is, you know, like you, I've experienced a lot of things in life, and looking back, it's like I saw this stuff coming, and I had those same feelings of, you know, I don't deserve better than this. I deserve this in some way or whatever. It was a form of self punishment, really, what I was experiencing through a lot of what I experienced in those times. And that was not coming from a very healthy place, to be quite honest with you, when I reflect back on that. And so, in essence, I allowed the catastrophe to happen because I didn't feel well about myself. And going forward, you know, I've learned from that. Like, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, but you know, having a better sense of self worth, understanding that you know my innate value is more than say the present circumstances I'm in, and all that other kind of stuff has really helped me to kind of gain a better understanding of my value. And so going forward, you know, when ideally, when I start seeing these things coming up, I'd be looking into ways that I can better handle these situations or be more proactive, which I know we'll get into a little bit more in the discussion as we go along. But it's really just seeing the importance of what you talked about. Once is seeing our value, and two, recognizing that we don't have to stay in this position, or we don't have to allow these things to happen. And and it's actually, you know, kind of a bit of a dangerous strategy when you really think about it, because it can cause a lot more deeper consequences to things if we don't become proactive in some of these things.
Well, it is probably the worst plan to not be proactive, because when you aren't proactive, you are operating from a point of acceptance. And when you are accepting things to happen, you are accepting that you are going to fail in some way. And even though failure happens, failure should not be acceptable. Failure should be understood. Failure um should be paid attention to and given the devil its due, basically recognizing it, that this happened. But that should not be something that we accept. And there's a little bit of nuance there, because I'm not saying that you don't accept your reality. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you don't accept that failure is going to be a given, that failure is a guarantee. There are no guarantees. All you can guarantee is the fact that you're going to take action, and life is going to respond in some way. And because life responds, you must then respond to that in some way. But lack of response is still a response. And if you're focusing on the fact that you'll only act when it's serious, who are you kidding? What is it that you believe is so important about your energy or about you that you should only have to act when it's serious? Life is serious. And so life should always be acted upon. One of my favorite authors, her name is Deb Dana. She's a licensed clinical social worker. And she follows the work of this one psychological researcher, Steve Porges, who created the um, polyvagal theory. It's a theory of social engagement and behavior that's better than any other I've ever seen. And one thing that she says in the beginning of her book, and I'm going to paraphrase it here because I'm probably going to butcher it, is that the goal is to fall in love with life and to enjoy the risk of living, because life is a risk. It is all serious, but we have to be willing to take that risk, knowing that we are probably going to lose something or something is going to happen, and we have to be comfortable with that. We have to come to terms with that. It doesn't mean that we have to accept failure as being given. We have to fight, struggle, and strive in order to achieve anything meaningful. And if you're just going to wait until something is serious or wait until it hurts enough to respond, what you're doing is you're saying, I am allowing failure to happen to me. And if it hurts too much, then I will get into survival mode and fight or flee. That's not living. That's barely surviving. We have to do better than that. As people, we have to be willing to do better than that. We have to be willing to say, well, let me rephrase that. We have to get to the point where we can say, something is happening, I have to prepare. That way, even though the pain does come, we are prepared for it and we can weather that storm, not be afflicted by it.
Yeah, I think you bring a very important distinction there between, understanding that failure is part of life and that we go through these things and there are things beyond our control, and recognizing that that is there versus actually allowing that failure to take place due to some kind of psychological control, dysphoria, I guess you can say, that you have within yourself. And, you know, when you go to the latter, uh, it allows you to play into the idea of being a victim. And oh my, why is this always happening to me? That you fall into that trap of being in the perpetual victimhood or doom and gloom. Whereas the other one recognizes that these events do happen. Some things are beyond my control, but I do have a certain measure of ability to respond in different ways, to take action, to do things, to potentially bridge the gap, or take a different course correction to navigate through the challenging times of life, which will then potentially prevent the the failure from happening. But even if it does happen, it's like you're not getting yourself down to a point where, okay, this happened, therefore I'm again going down that victimhood mentality where you're like, "Oh, I'm this terrible person," or I'm not worthy, or I'm all this and that. You take the failure and you're like, okay, what can I learn from this? What are the lessons that were embodied within this experience, and how can I move forward in a different way that may change the outcome next time, or may produce a better result next time. And those are two very different ways of approaching this.
And when you allow the pain to become a clear signal, when you believe that the consequences are undeniable, it's too late. Because by the time that the pain has happened, the ability to act, your options become very limited. And I think one reason why people do this is, yeah, they don't trust themselves to take a risk, where they're afraid that the risk is going to cost too much, and so they'd rather have a limited set of options that they can choose from, and that usually is an indicator of analysis paralysis. But what you've done is you have taken away the greatest options that you had, where more time would have given you more options. And so now you are acting just from a point of survival. And it's barely survival, because what you're doing is you are trying to scramble from the position of fight or flee. And sometimes not even that's going to work. And you have to just weather the storm through emotional collapse. And that's dangerous. Because as you allow yourself to do that, what you do is you allow the pain to be an indicator for you of what's happening, but it's a lagging indicator, meaning that it only shows up after all other options have been either expended or they have passed. It is not something that shows future outcomes. It's basically a result of actions or inactions that have been taken. And yes, inaction can be taken. So it's really important to understand that the pain that we feel is a self-inflicted wound, especially when we decide to allow it to happen at full force. When we see that something is coming on the horizon, and every man can do this, every human being can see things that are coming. If we see something that's on the horizon and we say, oh, this is going to come, and we do something about it to mitigate the strength of that pain, what you do is you set yourself up for better success. You don't make it so that the pain that you are untouchable to the pain. That's impossible. But comparatively, it is head and shoulders above just trying to weather the storm. You weather the storm when you're ill prepared. When you are better prepared, you're not weathering a storm. You are protecting resources. You're protecting what you have. And so you are making sure that you are not just weathering, you are um, weathering with a plan and with purpose, being able to move forward because you have exercised better options. So what does this look like in an example? Let's say that you and your missus have been fighting a lot and she's becoming more and more aggressive to the point where she's now banging her hand on the table or she's breaking dishes or whatnot. This is an indicator that things are escalating. Now you have a choice. You can either decide that you're just going to wait until it becomes physical towards you to do something, or you can address it right away. If you wait for pain, for the pain of physical abuse, first of all, I'm sorry that you feel that you have to do that. Second of all, the likelihood of you doing something when it gets to that point is not it's not high. Because if you are waiting for the abuse to become physical, but then it becomes physical and you realize that you can withstand it, you're going to move that goalpost and then move that goalpost. And so eventually you end up in a situation where you are weathering the storm. You're trying to salvage something without having to take any kind of action. Conversely, if you were a proactive individual and you saw that your wife was doing that, you might stop and say, "This is unacceptable. The way that this is going, I do not accept it. We have a couple of options, and this will only move forward if we take these options and we see change." The the difference is that you are deciding that you are protecting your relationship and you are protecting yourself versus just weathering a bad relationship. And it's really important to see this difference.
It truly is, and I when I reflect back on my marriage, there were so many points throughout that relationship where I was doing exactly as you said, just weathering the storm. The conflicts would come up, I wouldn't address them. I would close off. I would emotionally shut down, as I've shared in other podcasts that we've done before. And I just continually, as you said, moved the goalpost as to how much more I can endure, how much more can I endure. Thinking that, one, there was a part of me playing the victim within myself and allowing myself to play that victim role. Two, psychologically, it began to come to the point where I was telling myself that I deserve this in some way, and and there was a lot of things in there that played into this, and so I continually didn't address things that needed to be addressed. I didn't set proper boundaries that were healthy for a relationship when things escalated and stuff like that. And what was the end result? The collapse of my marriage. That was beyond fixable in many ways through outside help, even with therapy and stuff like that, and marriage counseling and stuff. And so, and it probably and it potentially could have gotten worse before it did get to where it was. But it got to the point where that was the bottom, and it was only from there, looking back at it and all the stuff that I went through, as you said, lagging indicator, right? It was only from there, and it wasn't even like the first year after the separation and the divorce and all that stuff kind of happened. It was almost 2 years by the time I really started realizing, you know what, I got to change something here, and really do something different about my life.
The most important thing to take away from what you just said, Jason, it really underlies the point that pain is not a reliable teacher. Experience is, but pain is not. And that's because pain, as we've both said, is a lagging indicator. And what it does is it distorts. It does not provide any kind of clarity. All that it does is provide what we can sustain, what we can withstand. And we will work to fight through adversity before we try to enact change. And that's because change is scary. The whole adage of the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. And in situations where things get bad, you know what the situation is. And so a person who is not willing to make any kind of change, who is not looking to prepare or not looking to create um, the plan for themselves, is going to fight through that adversity, thinking that through the other side, things are going to get better. And women talk about this all the time, as far as like the whole battered spouse thing. And I get it. I get what they're talking about. But let's be honest. When it comes to one-way violence, 75% of the perpetrators are female. So this is something that men have to talk about, because we as men, we don't want to cause harm to our spouses, but we need to lead. We need to lead because women are chaos gremlins. We've talked about this before. And are they're more likely to create adversity, especially when there is no plan in place. And their emotions are likely to get very high and then to act out in undesirable ways because of the lack of direction. And instinctively, women look to men for direction. They have for the last 300,000 years, because men are especially equipped with the capacity to think long term and create long range goals that people and communities and civilizations work towards to mitigate conflict in order to thrive. And when men don't step up to that, women become very nervous. And when they become nervous, they act out. And when they act out, they will act in whatever way is permissible. And it's important to understand that they will act out in whatever way is permissible. There's a rule of behavior that I have come across and that I also teach, which is that which is not corrected becomes rewarded. So when negative behavior is seen and nothing is done about it, it becomes rewarded. And so whatever is rewarded is going to continue. So it's really important to be able to understand what we are working towards and what we are going to communicate in order to ensure that bad behavior doesn't escalate. And if we're not doing that, then we are rewarding bad behavior by doing nothing.
And that's something that is really important to understand. That not only rewarding what this bad behavior by not addressing it or being proactive about it. It as we've discussed in other podcasts and stuff like that, is it gives the ability for it to actually become to escalate and become and transform into different forms that could become more aggressive in other ways and stuff like that as well. And this isn't just in the marriage relationship. This could be in any relationship, whether it be a work relationship or work environment or other things. This applies to everybody, and in all different situations. But right now we're kind of focusing on the marriage relationship, and yeah, because you know it's surprisingly when you hear, like you said, 75% of physical domestic violence is actually performed more from women.
One way, one way physical violence. So
Yeah,
meaning that one party acts on the other without retribution. 75% of that is perpetrated by women.
yeah, that's actually that's actually quite surprising to me, to be honest with you, but not surprising in many ways because not that I experienced the physical violence in my marriage and stuff like that, but I've seen stories and I've heard stories of where, and I know of other men that I've been in men's groups with that have experienced this, where they where yeah, the wife throws things at them and stuff like that, and it's because they've allowed that kind of behavior to happen. It may not have started off with them throwing things right away, but it started off with them pushing the boundaries, and then as things escalate, they took it a next step further because it was allowed to happen, and and the more that it was allowed to happen, the more it became rewarded, like you said, and and that's a very unhealthy space to be in. And as you talked about, with pain being the unreliable teacher, that's because when we are, from my understanding, when we're in these heated situations, especially if we haven't learned how to navigate them properly, our nervous system and everything becomes distorted from it, and we can't always think clearly through it.
Yeah, and the reason why we can't think through is because we believe that we can manage it. We believe that we're supposed to just deal with whatever comes, and that's stupid. That is a very unwise way of looking at life. Because if you feel like you're just supposed to endure things, what do you strive for? What are you working towards? Nothing. All you're doing is you are just enduring one thing after another. And the way you do anything is the way you do everything. You can't possibly tell me that you are someone who is successful in life when you are just enduring the pain in a relationship, or you are enduring being um, passed over for promotion, or you are enduring workplace harassment, or you are enduring uh, social bullying. You are enduring. There's no way you can tell me that you are a successful person, because in every other way of your life, I guarantee there is something that you are enduring, and I guarantee that sucks. And you want to find a way out of it. And the only way that you have out of it is to plan and then to act courageously with the knowing that you might fail, but that's okay because you failed doing something rather than failed and then just enduring the whatever's happening. You tried doing something, and the failure of action will always be more fulfilling than the failure of inaction. And those are two different kinds of failure, because failing doing something means you're failing forward. You are learning from your experiences and you are making ground. You won't make the ground that you want to make. You won't make the steps that you think that or that you expect to have. That's it. That most of the time that won't happen. Sometimes you'll get lucky, sure, but reality always claws back some of that. But you keep moving forward. You'll have a lucky break every now and then, and you just keep moving forward. You suffer failures, but you keep moving forward. And that is the endurance of someone who can weather life while still moving forward. But just using pain as an indicator, that's not the way to do things. Pain is a result. And you can either get the result through action, through doing something like leaving a harmful relationship, getting a different job, finding a different circle of people, be willing to be alone, be willing to be outcast, be willing to be judged by others, and not giving a shit. Excuse my language, but there's a acronym that I use called NFG, no fucks given. And that is the way that I've decided to live my life. I'm not going to care about what anybody says about me. I'm going to make I'm going to strive in the way that I believe I need to, and I'm going to make the gains that I feel that I'm able to based on the trajectory I want my life to take. I have a trajectory and I have a goal, and I plan on getting there. How long it's going to take, I have no idea. That's for life to determine. But all that I can do is take one step at a time, knowing that I'm going to suffer setbacks, and that's okay. But I am not going to just sit back and endure life beating down on me, feeling a failure, that I don't have the job that I want, or that I'm not where I want to be, or that my relationship sometimes sucks because my partner sometimes acts in ways that feels uncomfortable. I don't do that. I have a goal and I focus on that and move forward, knowing that by reaching that goal, I am going to be able to set the terms by which certain things happen in my life. And those terms, even though they can be scary, have to be met. They have to be set, and they have to be protected with boundaries. Another podcast that we've had in the past that you should look at, because it's a really important one, probably one of the most important ones that we've ever done. But the whole point is that pain is not a reliable indicator. You can't use it as a teacher. All that it does is tell you that you haven't done enough.
Yeah, and you brought up a couple of good points there, Jason. Especially, like the idea of what you do in one area of your life translates into what you do in other areas of your life. So the more things that you allow, that you tolerate, in regards to disrespect or abuse, or like you said, like being passed over in promotions, or how you allow your spouse to treat you, it does play over into other areas of your life. I've seen that, especially in my career, recognizing how, my relationship with my ex-wife was, and then look at how my career played out, and all the things that there's a lot of parallels there. I'd get frustrated. Why am I not getting these promotions? Why am I not being looked at and for this opportunity and stuff like that? Why am I seeing, people who I've trained and worked with and taught, all of a sudden moving ahead of me and it's like, and when I reflect back on it, there's a lot of parallels between how I was allowing the things in my marriage, and how I allowed my wife to treat me and all that other kind of stuff, played into how I allowed, the people in my workplace to treat me. And yeah, that's, when you're able to actually look back at it from where I'm at now, it all makes sense, and it plays into what we're talking about here today.
So the only thing that you can control is you. There are five things that you can control: your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, your decisions, and your actions. And if you allow pain to be an indicator, what you've done is you have omitted control to those 5 things. And the way that happens is it's not something like oh you don't just decide to take a face full of disaster all at once. You kind of gradually build up to that. And it starts with making small concessions or excuses as to why things happen. And those excuses, they lead to a delayed response, believing that the excuses you made were because things were inevitable. And then you build up the tolerance for more and more things to happen, increasing your excuses and delaying your response more and more. And what this is doing is eroding your place of control. What you control, which is you, you are allowing yourself to no longer be in control of your own self. You're especially not controlling your decisions and your actions, which are the outward face of your internal belief systems, which is your decision or your beliefs, sorry, which are your beliefs. And your beliefs are created by the story you tell yourself and the emotional state that you put yourself in. The story is your thoughts. Your thoughts create the stories about yourself, and your feelings create the emotional states, the inner states that you put yourself in. And these are controllable by you. And if you don't control them, life does. And when life controls them, pain increases. Because pain doesn't care about you. I'm sorry, life doesn't care about you. Life cares about things moving in a certain direction. And you will either be a part of contributing to that or you'll be swept up by it. One or the other. And you get to decide which of those happens. And if you're going to be swept up by it, you are omitting decisions. You are omitting control. And that is still a decision, but it is a decision that is adversely affecting you more and more. Eventually, you're going to have to make a decision because your absolute survival will require it. But making decisions based on that, it's making a decision based, it's making a decision from weakness. It is taking action from the lowest common denominator, which is absolute survival. So this is things like about to be homeless, drugs creating a possible OD, um, your relationship is to the point where your your spouse has turned into someone that is going to cause irrevocable harm or irreparable harm to yourself, to your property, or to the relationship in some way, or you're doing the same. Something in your life is going to lose big. It is going to cause you such distress that you have to do something in order to either stay alive or maintain or get back a certain well-being. Oftentimes, it's because you're about to lose something really big and you're trying to do damage control on what you lose. And that's not a place you want to find yourself in. And if you've done that before, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, then you'll either figure it out or you'll find out. But the biggest thing that I can talk about here is when you decide to wait, you're losing leverage on your ability to make sound decisions that will propel your life forward. And if you're not moving forward, you are moving backwards. You are creating decay because you can't stand still. It's either forward or backwards. It's really important to understand this.
That is a big thing to really take home from this is the fact that you know choosing to not take action is a choice. And oftentimes, where I think I've experienced this is often we choose not to make that decision, and then we want to play victim again. Oh well, this all happened. But then when you really look at it, from again, looking back, this is where taking ownership and taking responsibility comes into place too, is recognizing that those choices that you've made, whether it's a choice to not do anything or a choice to do something, you made that choice, and that choice led to a consequence. It led to an outcome. And if you chose inaction, knowing that there would be the possibility of this disaster happening, that's on you, because you made the choice to not move forward. And you chose in essence to not even attempt to mitigate the situation. And this allowed the whatever chaos pursued afterwards. And and that's challenging, because I know, like, for myself, you know, making that choice, it's not always comfortable. It's not easy. And and speaking up for yourself, especially when you have low self-esteem, that feels like a risk. Like, how is this going to backfire on me, right? You get all these other things that come up into your mind that want to play games with you, in the sense of what does taking action look like, and stuff like that. And those are things that I know I've experienced, but I allowed those lies into my life. The, and what did it lead to? It led to more damage. It led to more destruction. I guess you can say, in regards, especially to my relationship with my ex-wife. It led to unfulfilled career, I guess you can say, in other areas of my life and stuff like that. And and because I was hiding, I was playing in this place where I thought I felt comfortable, even though I was wallowing in pain and stuff like that.
So the question becomes, why would you want to wait? Because all the waiting does is it trades your ability to have options for experiencing damage, experiencing delays or discomfort. And discomfort isn't always a bad thing. Discomfort can often cause a person to move. But again, that is moving through because of pain. It's like moving because of a cattle prod rather than moving because you know that the cattle prod is coming and you don't want it to hit. Big difference. And some people believe that, well, I'm in a state of comfort and I need the discomfort in order to move. No, you don't. Comfort is an illusion. Comfort is the thing that we seek when we want to give up. Comfort is one of those things that happens when we decide that we are no longer um, working in our own best interest and we are allowing life to take the realm, to take the wheel. And I don't think that it is an option. Personally, I would much rather be in a constant state of moving forward. And if you call that discomfort, well, then you might need to reevaluate what comfort means. Because the only way that you enjoy anything is through movement. It is through moving forward. Resting on your laurels will lead to pain. This whole idea of being comfortable, that means you're waiting for things to actually happen. You are waiting for discomfort to force you to move. I don't see the point of that. I don't see the allure in waiting for something bad to happen in order to move. I would rather see that things could happen, that there could be a possible disaster, and then decide to move forward to mitigate as much as possible what could happen. It's the only way I think that the things can really manifest well. Without that, it's if you're waiting for something to occur, you are going to be very disappointed because it's going to happen in a way that you don't enjoy, rather than doing something yourself and being the captain of your ship and the one who decides what discomfort you decide or that you're going to experience because of what you are willing to do.
Yeah, and That's something really to really take hold of. One of the things that was coming to mind is faith without action. In my as I'm coming to learn, is not really true faith, because we have to put something behind what we're moving towards. If you want to live a better life, you want a better marriage, you want something to happen to propel something into a better direction, you can't just sit there and wish it all to just come into place. You have it comes by taking action, by doing something different to change the outcome, or to move the needle in a different direction. And that isn't always easy. Think about you want better health. Well, it takes learning what your body needs, right? Because everybody's body is slightly different. And so it's trial and error. Does this exercise plan work? Does this diet plan work? What do I need for nutrition, whatever, um, you know, to get the ultimate better outcome of a healthier body, or healthier, um, you know, you know, building strength. You got to go through the uncomfortable of lifting weights or doing some form of exercise that causes strain on the muscles for muscles to grow. It's the same for a relationship. If you're having conflicts and stuff like that, instead of avoiding the conflicts, what are the topics that are coming up? Have those conversations around those those topics. Ask the hard questions and be willing to hear the hard answers. Because without taking those kinds of actions, things aren't going to change, and eventually it will collapse.
I think Ken Blanchard talks about the whole idea of faith without action is called hope, and action without faith is chaos. And neither one is sustainable. Hope is not a plan, and chaos does not provide any kind of tangible result. And the reason why is because both faith and action are necessary. And faith requires a plan. It requires understanding what it is you're driving towards. What is it you want to achieve? What are you looking to accomplish through the actions that you take? And then take the actions. Understand that understand that being proactive does not mean being aggressive. It just means being assertive, being willing to assert yourself in your world. Understand what your reality is, look at reality for what it is, and be able to call it for what it is. Then just make sure that you set the right boundaries that you're able to achieve what you want to achieve. So by naming your reality, what you're doing is you're understanding the challenges before you, you are understanding the goal, and you understand the resources that you have at your disposal. Those are the three most important things that you can do to name your reality. Then, by setting the boundaries, you understand what you are willing to do and accept, and what you are unwilling to do and accept. And both of those are so important. You have to have a right and left limit, as we say in the military. And that right and left limit are going to determine how far you go. And this goes this is basically like a um when we were on the range or when we were in action, being having a sector of fire, understanding what your range of firing was going to be, so that you don't cause any kind of problems or jeopardize anybody else's well-being. You have that red left limit, what you will do, what you won't do. And then as things happen and you see certain challenges in your way, adjust course. That doesn't mean that you stop doing what you're doing, but if you see a certain challenge that you cannot overcome by going at it directly, just find another way to attack it. Attack it from a different angle, attack it from a different course of action. For instance, the last 10 years, I have been having some success, but not wild success as a coach. And I realized that in order for me to be successful as a coach, I needed to change the foundation that I operated from. So what I've done is pulled back my coaching and my marketing businesses, and I've been working more on building up my financial stability, my financial foundation. Because through that financial foundation, I will have a better able to reach the people I want to reach. I'll have more resources that will allow me to do what I need to do. I'm not stopping coaching and stopping the ways of which I serve people. What I'm doing is I am preparing and building up resources that will allow me to do that better. And for the people that I want to serve and the people that are going to be a joy for me to work with. And that's what adjusting course really is, understanding what's working and what isn't, and with the things that aren't working, what do you need to do to make sure that they end up working better, that they end up working for you. And finally, be accountable for your actions, the things that you do and the things that you don't do. And through that accountability, be willing to not only hold yourself accountable, but have a plan on how you will do things better in the future.
I really appreciate you sharing that, Jason, because that's a place where I'm at right now as well, is having to reestablish my financial stability because I've gone on a journey of a few years now of taking courses and all this other kind of stuff and not really earning substantive income. And I recognize that, oh, you know what, things come at a cost, and I don't count it as a loss because it's been an investment in myself. I've learned a lot. I'm here today. I've learned to share my voice, and I've connected with you and other amazing leaders in my life and stuff like that. And it's all because I made a choice to change, and I'm taking some risks and stuff like that. And and that's good in many ways. And are there ways I can improve? Definitely. There's ways that I can improve, and that's what we're talking about is okay, here I'm seeing this coming. Now how can I act before it gets to a critical point? And and so it's choosing, it's making choices to move into a position of prevention versus a position of recovery. And that's something that I think, again, it plays into every part of our lives, whether it be looking at our relationship, looking at our careers. It what we're talking about today spans all spectrums of our life, and and it's something that when we really think about the importance of this topic today, my hope is that that you guys will have taken something from this and are able to apply it.
When you do apply it, you'll find that the things change in your favor, and that you'll feel like you have more control. And I can tell you this from personal experience, being someone who's been on both sides of the pain proposition, where I've allowed myself to experience the pain, and I've allowed myself to interrupt that because I knew what I wanted and I took action. And the reason why this works is because when you take action, you interrupt the pattern that is evolving in front of you, that is evolving outside of your control. And you are interrupting it in a way where you'll still feel it somewhat, and you will be able to have some momentum forward. And when you do that, it forces reality to recalibrate in real time because you have decided to take action and you've interrupted the flow in which life is just barreling through. And you have decided to enter the stream of life that is in front of you, and you are making changes that you need to make for yourself, recalibrating in real time, making adjustments in order to achieve the goal, or at least get closer to the goal that you have envisioned for yourself. And by doing that, you preserve the options that you have at your disposal. You'll see that you have more options than you did when you just allowed the circumstances to go forward and you had to do damage control. You had to be in a protective and preservation state rather than an action and proactive state. And this is the path of masculine leadership, to be proactive, take action, and then recalibrate as necessary as you see challenges come across, and you need to plan differently. Be forward moving and be flexible, be adaptive. Those two things are going to do more for you than anything else you've ever been taught about success and about leadership. Adaptability and proactivity. Those are going to do more for you than anything else. And by doing that, what you do is you choose to prevent the pain rather than recovering from it.
Yeah, and taking action, moving and moving into, more, say, discipline part of your life, or taking on these things that you see coming, and making the choice to take action early to prevent an outcome that you see that is potentially there. It's going to cause growth. It's going to those challenges is what causes growth. And as you shared earlier, like, you can only lead from the point of where you're at, and as leaders, as men, who I believe, as you and I both believe, Jason, we're called to be servant leaders, not only in our homes but in our communities, and stuff like that. For us to be able to grow as leaders, we have it's something that we need to really take seriously in regards to being proactive when we see these things coming up. And these things, by taking action, it's going to cause us to be in that place of uncomfortability at times, which will allow us to grow. But that growth will allow us to become better leaders. And as we become better leaders, things in our lives become easier to manage. It's not that things aren't going to happen. We're still going to face challenges, and we're still going to be going through difficult things in life. But every time that we choose to move forward and be proactive in things that we see and grow in that space, the easier it will become to navigate those things.
And you're absolutely right. All men are called to be servant leaders. In fact, the greatest expression of leadership is to be of service. That is the ultimate expression of leadership. And you can only be of service when you take responsibility for the things you have to be responsible for. This is why accountability is so important. Because if you aren't accountable, how do you know how effective you have been for yourself and for others? And by understanding that your mission of what you are achieving is so much larger than yourself, you also become more responsible for what you do. You become more deliberate in what you do. Because no matter what you are choosing to do for yourself, it is always going to have impact on others. And by understanding that impact, by embracing the fact that you have a responsibility to yourself and to others, it's going to help you create the circumstances in your life, the goals that you want to achieve. And it's going to shape those around what you can do for yourself and how it's going to affect others, hopefully. If you're only doing it for yourself, eventually you're going to get to the point where you feel like you can relax, and then you're going to enter that paradox of comfort and pain. But working for something larger than yourself, something that you can benefit from, but it's not just for you. It's for your family, it's for your community, it's for um, the people around you in your profession, whatever it might be. What you're doing is you are choosing to protect not just yourself, but the systems that you are acting within. You're preserving the leverage you have by being proactive, making sure that you have as many options as possible before you have to be reactive. It can only take the options available. And you are doing so consistently and being very accountable and very responsible to how you are acting because you know that it's not just you that is being affected. This is the ultimate form of leadership and the ultimate way of being able to be an effective member of your family, of your community, of your profession, in all areas of life. Being able to act in a way that is proactive, that also is mindful of who you are affecting through your actions and understanding how you can affect them positively. You're going to understand how your movement forward is going to be noticed by others and is going to be appreciated. And yes, you're going to achieve success for yourself, and you're also going to be noticed by others because you are achieving success for others as well. Maybe not in the short term, but definitely in the long term.
And that's something that I think you just really summarized right there is the importance of not only achieving something for yourself, but for others, right? When you think about your relationship with your wife and stuff, by you taking these actions, by you being proactive in that relationship and being the servant leader in your marriage relationship, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits your wife. If you have children, it'll benefit your children because it will start to show them what a healthy relationship dynamic can be and stuff like that. And it sets them up for their future relationship because it's amazing how much our children absorb from us in regards to the way that we respond and react through life and stuff like that. And so every time that we choose to be proactive, every time that we choose to move forward and be the servant leader as men, it doesn't just benefit us, it benefits everybody around us, especially those who are really paying attention to us. And believe it or not, yes, there's a lot of people are caught up in their own lives and stuff like that. But when you become a person of influence, you'd be amazed at how many people are actually watching you, paying attention, and 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 not to put more pressure on you, but it does add another layer of pressure because now and it's not about being perfect either, right? It's about recognizing that it becomes another part of the layer of responsibility, another part of the layer of being a servant leader is recognizing that you're not just affecting yourself anymore. You're actually having an influence on other people's lives, and that's a beautiful place to be in. And but that does take being responsible. It does take being proactive. It does, you know, and that's okay.
A great quote from Mike Tyson is everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I love that quote. I really do because it really details how life is going to have adversity no matter how good your plan is. I also know that by understanding the moves that life is going to make, you can't control them, but you can mitigate the damage that it does. In boxing, you learn to defend yourself as well as fight. And in life, you have to be willing to do the same thing. Yes, you might get punched in the face, but it's important to be able to know how to block, how to bob and weave, how to use your body in a way to buffer that hit so that it doesn't hit quite as hard. And that's what we're really talking about. Being proactive in a way that's going to lessen the blow and give you more options rather than stand reeling, trying to maintain your ability to stay in the fight.
Yeah, that's great. Because how many times have we been punched in the face because we haven't protected ourselves by life situations? Yeah, 100%. Oh my gosh. Ah, well, Jason, it's been great having you on the show again. And as we are coming to a conclusion, I want you guys to think about this. If today's conversation exposed an area where you've been waiting instead of leading, imagine working through those conversations with a room full of men who refuse to let each other drift. That's what the Forged Brotherhood is about. It's not perfection, but practicing leadership together before life forces the lesson. We recognize that every man will experience pain. That's a part of life. But not every man has to wait for that pain before he chooses wisdom. Leadership isn't measured by how well we recover from avoidable damage. It's measured by how faithfully we respond while we still have choices. God has entrusted us with families, friendships, workplaces, churches, and communities. Those things aren't protected by good intentions. They're protected by courageous, timely action. So this week, don't wait for the crisis. Don't wait until a relationship is breaking. Don't wait until your health is failing. Don't wait until your faith feels distant. Pay attention to the quiet warnings. Have the difficult conversation. Take the first step. Because strength isn't proven by how much damage you can endure, it's revealed by the wisdom to prevent it. And that's what it means to be forged. So, thanks, Jason, for being here. And to all of you guys, until next time, bye for now.